All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the live session for EO New Delhi GSEA 2021. On this live, we host industry leaders, startup mentors, successful entrepreneurs, and angel investors. Entrepreneurs Organization is a global not for profit organization, which is a network of more than 14,000 like minded leaders across 61 countries. Every year, EO conducts GSEA, which is Global Student Entrepreneurship Awards, which is a premier global startup competition for students who are currently in college and who run and operate a business while studying in college and universities. GSEA supports student entrepreneurs with mentorship, recognition, and connection to take their business to the next level. For this live, I'm your host Dilnawaz Khan, and let me quickly introduce our guests for today. Our first guest is Mr. Sameer Sood. Sameer is the founder of Venture Highway. Venture Highway is a founder focused seed fund that partners with category creating next generation technology entrepreneurs in India. Sameer has worked in leadership roles with global firms like Google, Microsoft, Cisco Systems, and much more. Our second speaker is Mr. Vedant Khetan. Vedant is the vice chairman of the Khetan School Noida and founder of Khetan Preschool Noida. Vedant is also the chair for GSEA for EO New Delhi. I would like to quickly give a round of applause to both the. I would request all of you to give a round of applause, virtual round of applause for both our speakers, both our panelists for today. And let me quickly add them to the screen. So, good evening, Vedant. Good evening, Sameer, and thank you so much for doing this.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, Nirmaz. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for taking out time and doing this. I'm sure today's session will be very, very interesting and insightful for us, for our listeners. One of you, like both of you, come up with almost like a two decade plus experience across multiple sectors, corporate, education, venture investing, funding, and you're doing tons of other things as well. So my first question, rather, I would request for both of you to give me a quick brief about what you are doing, what you have been up to, what's exciting, how's 2021, what are the plans for 2022. So take us through your journey. Tell us who you are, what you do. I've given just to the people to understand, but I want you to really go deep and talk about it. Sameer, why don't you go ahead first and talk about yourself, please?
Thank you. Really good to meet all of you. And thank you for the opportunity to share my experience with you guys. Today, I do early stage venture, which is seed funding for tech companies based out of India. I'll give you a quick background. I spent about 20 years in the US, and this is year 14 for me back in India. I grew up in the south of India, Madras, which is now Chennai, went to school there. Post that, I went to the US to study. I did my bachelor's and master's in engineering in and around Boston. My next stop was Wall Street, where I was a banker doing mergers and acquisitions and IPO work in New York. Post that, I went to business school, which was the University of Chicago, Booth. And post Booth, I was very interested in tech. My first stop in big tech was Microsoft. I was a product manager for the small and medium business or SME space. Learned a lot, but very soon after found myself in Silicon Valley. And I worked with two firms there. My first firm was Cisco Systems. At Cisco, I did acquisitions and venture investing. And that's where I learned the ABCs of venture. My free food journey with Google started in Silicon Valley in 2005. And I joined the team that did all the M&A and investments. In a year, I decided to move as leadership to Asia. And outside of sales and outside of Korea, Japan, and China, I covered this region, looking 5 years out for strategy, for investments, for other business opportunities for Google. I spent 3 years in the region here, and that's how I got to know the early stage ecosystem in India extremely well. Found myself back in Silicon Valley in 2009, only to quit and give up the free food. And then I joined a family business, 7 manufacturing plants, making auto, defense, and agri-vehicle components. This is where I Unlearned the MBA. I forgot about Google and learned about real India. India supply chain, India customer, India labor, India manufacturing, India costing. I did that over the next 5 years. And that's actually one of my biggest learning experiences was running a business in India. Alongside, I was an angel investor from 2010 to 15 and really enjoyed early stage venture investing as an angel. And that's actually how Venture Highway was born. Me and a buddy of mine, both ex Googlers, started Venture Highway for a few reasons. One was we were very passionate about seed or early stage. The second thing was, we were both from India, uh, and we had spent a significant amount of time outside of India, so had tremendous networks both in India and outside, especially in the valley. So we wanted to give back to the ecosystem to mentor people when they were starting up. We also wanted to work for ourselves. But the biggest thing for me was the continuation of learning. And I think over the last 10 years that I've been investing in founders and learning with them has been for me a journey that I am even today very excited about. Today, we are investing from our third fund, doing very early stage seed tech.
So that's a very interesting introduction, and being coming from the corporate and then running multiple businesses, and now you've been an angel invest for 10 plus years. I'm sure you'll be dropping a lot of golden nuggets of wisdom here on the discussion today, and I'm sure I would request all the folks watching this, make sure you make your notes, go and grab a pen and a paper and ready and get ready to make your notes, because I can assure you one thing. Getting both of these gentlemen on a common panel, it's difficult, and both of them are very very busy. So treat it like a masterclass. Go and grab a notebook and a pen and start making notes. And most importantly, this is also an opportunity for you to ask your questions. So if any of you have any questions, please make sure you put them in the live chat. I'll pick them up as and when possible. And with that, let me now move on to Vedant. And before I come to Vedant, I love the way you said unlearning the MBA. And MBA was more or less like a foundation for a lot of years for a lot of young guys, and then unlearning the MBA started happening. With that, Vedant, you have been an education entrepreneur for almost like 2 decades, right? uh, uh, Tell me, take us through your journey. What's been your journey like? How come you started, and what are you up to today? And I'm sure that there'll be tons to learn from you as well. So over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Dilnavaz. Firstly, I would like to declare that what you heard from Samir, that was definitely very overwhelming and a super impressive resume that Samir brings with him. I'm sure there's lots for me to learn from him as well, and I look forward to that. As far as my story goes, I belong to a business family, a family of industrialists, and a family of lawyers, actually. My journey, I was born and brought up in Calcutta. We shifted to Delhi, did my schooling from Delhi, after which I went to the US to the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, where I did my engineering. Thereafter, I worked in a tech firm called Applied Materials, which was into manufacturing and design of silicon wafer. Did that for just a few months and then came back to my family business of chemicals and fertilizers. During that time, I had an experience of my own startup, which I did for a few years, which failed. And I think there was a lot of learning there. After that, I got an opportunity and joined my grandfather, who was actually ailing at the time, and started helping him out with the K-12 school that he had established. And just kind of got involved with doing that a lot, and I started enjoying it. And that's how I got into the education space. And about 4 or 5 years of being in, doing the working at the school and growing that, we established Katan Preschool, which was again one of my, that was the second or third startup, so to say, that I had done. Of course, not technology, but education, and that was really interesting. And we've been doing that for now 8 or 9 years and done it successfully. As a part of my education journey, I had the opportunity of starting up and or being a co-founder of FICCI Arise, which is the education chapter of FICCI, and I've been privileged to be part of the core committee and the board for a good number of years, and I've learned a lot from great friends there. And I was also the co-founder of the Independent Schools Federation of India, chapter Gautam Budh Nagar, where we got 40, 50 of the prominent schools of Noida together and created a body, which again was great experience, great learning, and also very similar to a startup. So that's a very brief introduction about myself, Dilnawaz. And as we speak today, we're now looking at growing, our number of schools that we have in the franchising route or in the managed school space, and that's really what one has been keeping busy with.
Sure, that's amazing, and once again, also thanks to you for letting all of this happen. I just want to reiterate that both Sameer and Vedant are a part of EO New Delhi chapter, and Vedant is the chair for GAC, and I'm really grateful to him for letting all of this happen. I think I'm sure this will create a greater impact out there, and I think content is the new thing. So this is definitely going to
Absolutely.
help tons of students out there who are planning to explore entrepreneurship as a career. So Sameer, my next question, so let's dive into the Q&A, let's dive into the discussion. So the first question I have for you is, how do you see the fit of venture highway in the Indian startup ecosystem? I'm sure you spoke a little about uh, the early stage venture investing, but again, a few of the people who are on the channel know me that I've spent around 10 years in the ecosystem myself, and now the VC space, especially at early stage, is super cluttered, right? Everybody is trying to build a early stage VC firm. So somebody like you who comes with so much of an experience, what's your product market fit, what's your market fit, how do you see venture highway, and what kind of entrepreneurs are you supporting? I just want you to talk about that now. So over to you.
Why
Sorry,
we
Sameer. Can you repeat? I think you were on mute. Can you repeat that, please?
I'll start with why we are a little differentiated from all of the other seed funds based in India. So, first of all, we've been doing this for a period of time in India. I've been investing as an angel and then through the fund now almost 10 years. My co founding buddy, Neeraj Arora, used to work, he was the first business person at WhatsApp. And he was with WhatsApp for about 7 years, was also part of the exit to Facebook. And he's based in Silicon Valley. And I'm from Silicon Valley. So we have a very, very deep Silicon Valley connect. Also, between the two of us, we worked at Microsoft, Cisco, Google, Facebook, WhatsApp. So our connects back to Silicon Valley are tremendous. And also, our team consists of lots of women, very different EQ, people who have been founders who have exited, not only in India but in Silicon Valley, and operators. 0 to 1 in my experience, which is the seed journey, is one of the most difficult journeys for a startup. And when you are thinking of doing that, capital is one aspect, but you must have, like you said, a very smart cap table. What that means is, can the people who are funding you for the first time get you to that 1, and then from 1 to 10? So, all founders, as you raise capital, always look at not only, well, the amount of capital certainly matters, but also the people who you're raising the capital from. What can they do for you? Can they give you tech knowledge? Can they give you, can they open doors to partnerships? Can they potentially give you your first few customers? These are some of the things that you must think of as you select very early stage investors. I'll let Vedant go ahead and give you his perspective. He'll have a very different perspective, given runs, he comes from the educational background.
Yeah, sure. So with that, your take on this one.
Yeah, so I think when you talk of students, who are doing startups, we do see a lot of interest coming in entrepreneurship from students. In fact, at our school about 7, 8 years ago, we had kids who had designed their own operating system, and they merged. I think it was Android and Microsoft operating system, and they tried to create their own OS, and they went about marketing it, raising capital from friends and family, and actually made a little bit of noise around it. To be honest, I don't know what happened years down, but one of them got invited by Harvard to give a talk at TEDx and by the president of the US at the time. So entrepreneurship definitely in schools is a real thing. I don't think as schools we've done a lot to really foster that and to feed that, but now, at least as far as CBSE is concerned, I know that they do have an entrepreneurship course which schools can put in and grow it, and that really is something that we're looking forward to introducing entrepreneurship very very early on, and start having that mindset as far as children are concerned in schools. When you look at colleges, there are incubation centers that have come up. There are incubation heads. There is Atal Tinkering Lab, which sponsors entrepreneurship at the college level. So definitely, this is something that is now picking up, all over. And the fact that organizations like EO, are organizing the GSEA, I think it's a brilliant time and space to be in, and a great opportunity for people for children or young adults who are between the ages of 18 and 31 to apply and really taste what GSEA is all about. Yeah.
Amazing. So I think I'll keep on building on top of it because I think both of you gave a lot of you should share tons of information that in a nutshell, and I want to really go deep into that. Samir, I'll come to you first. So you said that everybody is looking for capital, and of course the moment you hear the word funding, like everybody is out there funding, and like everybody's in the line, begging for money or aspiring to raise capital. But and I'm sure you definitely will agree with me on this. Capital is the easiest thing to raise when it comes to running a startup. There are tons of other things that you need to put right in place, uh, other than just having access to capital in order to build a successful company. So two questions. One, what do you bring on the table as an early stage VC firm other than the money, right? And then second, for you, what is like an entry point? When should entrepreneurs reach out to you? What kind of entrepreneurs are you looking at? And what is the right time to raise capital? Because if things are not in place, they will definitely be getting a lot of rejection from investors, which might dishearten them at some point in time. I know it's a pretty open-ended question, but I want definitely you to take a take on this, and take your time. I want if it's like a masterclass, feel free. So over to you and take it ahead.
I'll just like to build on what Vedant said. The one thing that I've seen now, I've been back 14 years, yeah. The one thing that I've seen is a change in culture. We were never encouraged to fail in school. You always had to be the top of your class. The minute you get into a startup, you know you're failing 70 to 80% of the time. Now, let me tell you what's happened. I think Nana, Nani, Dada, Dadi, mom and dad today are okay with failure. And what I mean by that is when they see a Flipkart being bought out by a Walmart or all of these companies going IPO, they realize that there is a huge value to be created in the startup ecosystem. And what they're encouraging people to do is, I think, go and try entrepreneurship, especially earlier on in life. It's okay to go try something new and fail. This is one thing that when I was growing up did not exist. Today, I see that there is a change in the mindset of people in India, which is fantastic for the ecosystem. The other thing that's happening here is the smartest people are going to startups now. And what happens when the smartest people go to a vertical? It explodes. And I think that's what's happening in the startup ecosystem. You asked about what we look for when we are funding people. It's so early. I'm funding ideas, I'm funding people. So the number one thing I look for is the team. Because if the team is not very good, let me tell you, the probability of the idea moving forward doesn't matter. So the number one thing I focus on at the seed stage is team. The second thing I focus on is clarity of thought. There are many people who sit in front of me and pitch to me, and they don't even know what they want to do clearly. You should be able to explain to a class 5 student very simply what your plan is. And then you can dive deeper. If you have that ability to very simply explain to a class 5 student your plan, you probably have very good clarity of thought. The other thing is, as you grow, you have to be able to build a team. You have to attract the best people to your startup. And another aspect is that the market for venture has to be really large. Now, there are two ways of looking at this. Venture capitalists look for very, very large uh, opportunities. And therefore, the market or the target market has to be really large eventually. Those are about four top things, and of course, there are many others. But I'd like to lead with four of those. If you are trying to put together a plan, think about four of those, and it'll give you a framework before raising money. When do you raise money? Anytime you're ready to implement your idea, go to people and get an introduction, get a warm introduction. Do not do cold calls, because a warm introduction anywhere on the planet, it's not just venture, is much, much more easy because it will get you the meeting. Those are some of my thoughts.
Amazing. I want you to still continue on one point which very interesting, which I've heard hundreds of times. Every investor, every angel investor speaking about, it's more than the jockey than the horse. It's more about the team than the idea or the business. Uh, Tell me three most important critical things you look for in a team, and what's a great and what's the great team like? What's the composition? What's the mindset? Who is a great team? So what can somebody do to one, build a great team and build a great fundable team? Your take on that one.
So I'll give you my Silicon Valley perspective and then my India perspective. I think in Silicon Valley, I saw a lot of tech entrepreneurs who became great business people eventually. In India, an ideal team for me is one tech guy and one dhanda guy. So business and tech, two people are ideal here. And I'll tell you why. Because in India, the coder generally doesn't know dhanda, and the dhanda guy knows nothing about coding. So this is what I'm trying to differentiate the difference between what I've seen in Silicon Valley and what I see in India. So when you're starting out, if it's a tech company, please make sure that you have a co-founder that knows tech, because let me tell you, I as a business person, I don't know one line of code. I can't write it, so it doesn't matter. That's one perspective. Your second question on what are some characteristics we look for? Look, we have a huge framework of like 14 characteristics, but I'll give you one. One is your ability to build a team. Think about it. As you scale, you can't do everything yourself. So you have to realize what you're good at, and you have to fill the gaps as you build a team. You know, it could be HR, it could be ops, it could be tech, it could be go to market sales. Whatever you're not good at, you have to be able to scale by hiring the right people. The second thing is, like I said, clarity of thought. That is very, very important. Another characteristic, any entrepreneur I've seen has to be extremely, extremely resilient. What I mean by that is that, look, the entrepreneur's journey is the most up and down journey that I have experienced in my life. You're always dealing with 100 things hitting you every day or every week as you try and build a business. So, resilience is also very, very important, because you just have to try three things. Maybe two of them will fail, maybe three of them will fail. You have to pick yourself up the next day and say, okay, lage raho. Those are some of the characteristics that I have at the top of my list when I look at founders.
Awesome. Vedant, so Samir, I think that's very interesting, and I think I am loving the speed, the momentum at which this conversation is going, and I'm enjoying myself. I'm learning so much myself, and I'm sure audience is also enjoying. Vedant, just building on on top of what Samir said, two quick questions: one, failure, and second, mindset. Right now,
Right.
you deal with so many students, and you are a education entrepreneur running schools. Now the typical education industry, school industry is fail nahi ho sakte. You're always like, you can't
Bilkul.
get 5 out of 50, you can't get 10 out of, you can't fail. Wherein now the world is changing, and I'm sure you would have seen this trend also, that people don't see failure as a bad thing anymore. Now the failure as a learning is also becoming very, very common. Parents know it, teachers know it, schools know it, founders know it, everybody knows it. So how have you incorporated this theory of failure and fail fast, fail early, learn from it, reinvent, relearn, unlearn into your system? Talk about that. And second, also talk about the mindset shift in schools and sorry, in students and parents now, because now the seeds are also being sown right back in school, where students talk about entrepreneurship, startups, and becoming a job creator, becoming an entrepreneur. So your thoughts and take on it. Over to you.
In fact, I'm really glad, Samir, that you brought this up, on failure, because I think Indian schools have traditionally been quite behind on this concept, and probably a cultural thing in our country. But I agree with you, Dildamas, that people are beginning to shift. Though I personally feel the shift is slow. As far as the Catan School is concerned, in fact, about a year and a half ago, we did a hard reset on our curriculum and pedagogy, where we as educators kind of decided that, look, why is it that the learning has to be the same for every child? Because everyone doesn't have the same set of intelligence. Someone may have emotional intelligence, someone may have entrepreneurial intelligence, someone may have artistic intelligence, and different people fail at different things. So the idea of education is to really bring out the best that a person can be, rather than point out what is the worst that's in them, right? That's the whole point of education. But we've always traditionally looked at it from a very different lens, that everybody has to be good at everything. So I think I'm really proud of the fact that our team now, when we're looking at our pedagogy and curriculum, we encourage children to make mistakes. We encourage parents not to intervene in homeworks, assignments, projects that are given to children. Let them do wrong things. Let them create stuff that doesn't make sense at all, because maybe it makes sense to them and not to us. And that's okay, because there is no right and there is no wrong. It's just a perspective. And I think that mindset, when it carries on for decades, brings out the best in us as a community. When you have platforms like Google and WhatsApp, when they came up, it probably didn't make sense to a lot of people. But today our world is centered around it, right? I mean, who would have thought that you're going to go online and order eggs 25 years ago? It was unheard of, right? But somebody came up with a crazy idea which wasn't okay back in the day, and today it's the norm. So I think education has a big role to play, as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, because it's very early on as children that if you're taught to think differently, and if you're taught to think that something different is not wrong, but something different is just a different idea that someone else didn't think about, that in my opinion is worth its weight in gold. I mean, that's the end goal of education: to create, to identify problems which others haven't seen as yet, and give a solution. And that really is the center point of any successful app, any successful tech product, any successful website, any successful product, I mean physical product. So that's really my take on failure. And what I loved that Samir said on simplicity, that if you can explain it to a 5-year-old child or a class 5 child, right? I guess for me, in my head, that is pretty much answering the question why. As Simon Sinek says, right, in his book on why, finding your why. I mean, why is it that you're solving this particular problem? I guess there are a lot of people out there who say, I'm going to do a tech startup and I'm going to get X million dollars of funding, and then I'm going to sell it and make $1 billion. I feel that those kind of conversations are probably very weak and really have no heart in them. And people who are really after a particular why, whether it's industry, whether it's tech startup, or whether it's a school, even, there are some great schools out there. and I think they're great because they've got a very solid why behind them. Why is it that they do run their schools or their organizations in a certain way? And that has led to tremendous success for a lot of people. And I personally in my life try to imbibe that and start with why is it that I'm trying to solve a particular problem. So I think simplicity and the concept of failure both are absolutely brilliant, Samir, and thanks for bringing that up.
Now, it's a great point. Why? That is just fundamentally you have to understand for yourself why you're doing this. I just share my personal reason of why I actually just like helping people. It's very simple. And in venture, you constantly are helping so many startups. That's why I do what I do. It's very simple. That's the one liner a fifth grader will understand. I do it because I like helping people. It's very simple.
That is amazing.
Thank you, Vedant. Thank you for
Truly.
that. That's really, really important.
And I think it takes a lot of time to realize that the why should be that you enjoy doing it rather than anything else. And if you thoroughly enjoy doing it, uh,
That's
I think
true.
you'll keep on doing it. Yeah. So amazing advice there, gentlemen. I think we're almost at half of the mark of our conversation, so I just want to kind of reset everything. So first of all those who are watching us, this is the live session with both of these gentlemen, Samir Sood and Mr. Vedant Kitan, from Venture Highway and Ketan School, respectively. If you are watching us on Facebook or YouTube, we are also going to pick up your questions. This live is brought to you by EO New Delhi GFEA. The link to apply is in the description. Please make sure if you are students, student not early stage startup founder, please make sure you go and apply. Most importantly, you can also use this platform to ask your questions. I have got one big comment with 4 questions. I'll bring that question to you in a while, but if meanwhile if any of you have any questions, and I'm sure you've heard the conversation up till now, and you know where both of these gentlemen come from, the background, the value they bring on the table, please make sure you ask a question and use this time well. I'm still telling you, getting them together is really really difficult. Ask me. So my next question to you is, I'm sure both of you have spoken about failures, learning, unlearning, relearning, all of that, but a lot of your failures can be reduced or can be mitigated by a great mentor, right? So my definition of a great mentor is, a great mentor is not somebody who can tell you what to do, but most important, tell you what not to do, right? uh, Samir and Vedant, I want both of you take a take this question, go a little deep into importance of mentoring into early stages, and maybe you can talk about your mentoring journey, the mentoring advice you got. Just elaborate on the mentoring bit, because mentoring is so underrated and yet so important, and I'm sure both of you will agree. So Samir, why don't you go ahead and take this first, and then Vedant, I'll come to you. Samir, over to you.
I didn't have a plan of starting a venture firm. My mentor for uh, Venture Highway is my old boss from Google, Salman Ullah. Salman is now on Fund 5 in Silicon Valley. And what he was very, very good at telling me was that, Samir, I probably can't tell you what is right, but I can at least tell you the pitfalls that you should avoid. And that is one huge learning for me when I even talk to my startups. If I can't help them, I immediately say, I don't know. But if I have in my network an experienced person who can at least give them some experience sharing, that goes a long way, because you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. Think about it. So always reach out, even if you're a startup founder, there's a lot other stuff to be done, but you don't need to figure out how to structure a startup. All of that stuff is already done. Make sure that the stuff that is already done and that is already completely baked, don't try and reinvent that. Reinvent where there's very little done and where you are creating a huge disruption. So that's my 2 cents on mentorship, who I consider a very big mentor of mine in Venture Highway, and an advice as a startup when you're thinking of starting out, what you should do.
Thank you for that. Vedant, your take on it.
So I think I'm going to speak on the other end of the spectrum. Samir spoke about the startup phase, but I think mentor-mentee is actually a way of life. When you're a startup, you have a certain set of problems. When you get your first fund, you'll have a new set of problems, and then when you get your Series C, B, A, your Series A funding, then you probably listed. Every step you take, every progress that a company makes or an individual makes in his journey of entrepreneurship, new problems keep coming up, and the levels keep getting escalated, right? So as an established business, I find myself reaching out to mentors all the time, whether they're educationists, whether they're education entrepreneurs, whether they're legal experts, and I don't mean advice or professional services. I'm talking of mentoring in its purest form. And I think that's just a way of life. And if people in the entrepreneurial space, accept that early on that they need mentors at various stages, I think it just makes life so much simpler. And Samir, I couldn't agree more with you when you were talking about not reinventing the wheel. As entrepreneurs, as an entrepreneur myself, I find myself getting sucked into this great high of creating something, only to realize a couple of months down the line that somebody had already done it a long time back. And if I just reached out to the right person, I could have saved time, effort, energy, and money, right? So obviously, you do keep making mistakes, which is why it's that much more important to have mentors. Surround yourself with mentors, not just one, but maybe one for growth, maybe one for strategy, maybe one for marketing. I don't know. There could be different types of mentors, right? So I think that is absolutely essential. And yes, you're right. They tell you what not to do, which is far more valuable than to tell you what to do, because that is your entrepreneurial journey.
Right, absolutely. So we're almost at the end of the session. I have a few more questions to take, and of course, I'll once again request audience, if they have any questions, feel free to put them in the live chat, and I'll pick them up in the end. I just have one or two last questions for you guys. Uh, Next, I want to talk or quote your own failure story and what you learned from it. So, Sami, you can take it first and talk about your own failure story, or and what you learned from it.
You know, I've seen so many cycles in my life. One of my biggest failures was I didn't have a job coming out of my MBA. And why was that? Because this was 2001. I just finished at the University of Chicago and the dot-com bust happened. This is probably before many of you may even be been born. I don't know. But what that taught me was, it's in these downturns that you become very, very resilient. Post that, I reached out to every contact of mine, and nobody was hiring on the planet at the time. I remember this. I reached out to an undergrad college friend of mine who was at Microsoft. And I said, look, buddy, here's the job description. I fit it 95% of the job description. Please put my resume in front of the manager. And that was a warm lead. It wasn't a cold call. So the warm lead of my friend who didn't even know this person but knew who was hiring within Microsoft put it in front of the manager. 8 interviews later, in 2001, after the dot-com bust, I was able to get a job with one of the companies that was hiring on the planet. So never, never give up. Just find a way. That is what I have to share. That was one of my low points in my life. Post college, huge loan, needed to pay it back, didn't have a job, used networks to make sure in one of the low points of economies in my lifetime, I was able to get a job.
That's amazing advice. Never give up and use your network. Amazing. GSC is a great platform to build your networks, and I've seen so many students leveraging it. I think most importantly, this platform also helps them to network with angel investors and jury and judges who come on the platform. So I think it's a great platform. Vedant, your failure story and what you learned from it.
So when I came back from Applied Materials, where I was working at Austin, Texas, I joined the family business, which was going through its own upheaval and its own set of issues. And soon after that, after a couple of months, I started a company with a friend of mine, where we were doing reverse engineering drawings. So I'm a mechanical engineer, and using that background, I tried to set up an outfit where where we had clients from the US and Canada primarily, looking at doing reverse engineering drawings and conversions of CAD drawings to 3D models and things like that. And I put in about 2 3 years, and very insignificant investments, but a lot of time and a lot of effort. And that business did not go anywhere. I mean, we didn't move beyond 2 or 3 employees. Absolutely no funding. It was all internally funded because, as I said, it was too small. But I think that experience taught me a lot about tech, because that was a tech-enabled business. It wasn't a tech business in its purest form, but it gave me a lot of insight on technology and how technology can be leveraged to build an efficient organization. And like I said, I had a background in mechanical engineering and not programming or computer science. So that kind of took the fear away of technology, number one. Number two, I had a partner. So how to work with somebody else, I think that was a great learning, because you are the boss, but you're not the only boss. You have somebody else to report to or work with, right, at the same level. And that was a very humbling experience, and really taught me a lot about managing yourself around others. And thirdly, the fact that I shut that business down almost overnight and jumped into an opportunity which was, where I saw myself actually contributing and adding value. I think that was the biggest learning for me. I guess, to put it in perspective, you know, to know when to put a stop to something, it's like cutting off your arm, right? Like if you've got a disease and you have to cut it, you just have to cut it. You can't be emotional about it beyond a point. You got to be practical, and you got to take the hard step. And sometimes you just got to jump into deep waters without really knowing where it's going to take you. So the ability to take risks, to have faith in your conviction, I think that is something that I did learn, because it was going from the pan to the fire, because I had no idea what I was getting into. And I just saw, again, Samir, that point of why, I just saw a problem, and I thought, this is something I can definitely solve. I know they need my help. And what I've been doing for 2 or 3 years is just not working. It's not giving me the kind of satisfaction it should. And so it was a giant leap of faith for me. And honestly, I think that was the best decision I ever took.
No, you bring up some very good points. Thank you, Vedant, for sharing. So, for example, I'd just like to build on that. Some of the key reasons why startups fail, one is actually capital. The number one reason is capital. So make sure that you're always funded enough. You brought up, you have to get along with your founder. Very important, right? Because if day 0, day 1, day 2, day 100, you fight with your founder, that game's over. It's not going to be pretty. I mean, it could work out, but it's not going to be pretty. And you pointed out in your business, no market need. No market need is a very, very big reason why startups fail. Another reason that there's today, like there's so many people who, if you see an opportunity, there's so many venture people who are willing to fund teams to try and do the same thing. You can get outcompeted. So these are just some of the things to build on the point that you brought up about the failure that you had is very important in startups. And you have to make that hard decision at some point in time for these various reasons.
So to sum it all up, there are two very interesting quotes, and both of them are extremely like they're the conflicting the other side of the spectrum. So one of them says never give up, and on the other side you have a genius knows when to quit. And I think running a successful startup is somewhere in between. That is how a startup functions, right? So you have to decide when to quit and when not to give up. I think that's, if you are able to find a sweet spot, you are eventually, you will become a successful entrepreneur. And then of course, multiple failures, multiple iteration, failing every day and learning, I think it's again a successful entrepreneur. I think it's more of a mindset game. Or I would say it's a equally a mindset game than a product game. And I'm sure both of you will agree or feel free to disagree. Okay, so my closing question to you would be, and this is the last question from my side, and I'll open it up for the audience. One piece of advice, and I'm sure you both of you have dropped a lot of heavy advice, golden nuggets on the platform, on the conversation. One advice you want entrepreneurs to take away from this conversation? One advice you believe or one lesson you want to share with the entrepreneurs? One thing that they should really keep very close to the heart while building a company, especially in early stages. Samir, why don't you take it first, and I'll then come to Vedant.
You know, an entrepreneur's journey is one of extremes. It's really one day can be great, the other can be really bad. So, if you are getting into entrepreneurship, please realize that it's extremes of your life. You have to be ready for chaos for an extended period of time. Um, it's a very, very difficult journey. It's probably the most difficult journey that you will probably set out on, especially if you're starting from zero. And especially if you're raising venture money, because venture outcomes expectations are really, really large. So that's what I would say is that be prepared for a rocket ship ride, and one which is of chaos, of some highs and many lows. But I think the people who continue to thrive in this high, low, high, low, high, low eventually keep growing, growing, growing with great teams around them. That is what you want to try and achieve. And then potentially, as your startup grows, you will see the fruits of this chaotic world that you've started out in X years from now. From a time frame perspective, some of my startups, it's taken them 4 to 5 years to really, really break out.
Amazing. Vedant, the lesson you want to share with people?
Well, I'll just carry on from Samir that after you break out, your highs and lows, could be of different proportions. But in my experience, they really never end. The flavor changes. And as an entrepreneur, two things that have had a very, very deep impact in my life. One is a book and one is a movie. And I would recommend every entrepreneur to see the movie Founder, which is on Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, and read the book The One Thing, which is written by a gentleman called Gary Keller. I think these two, this book and this movie, have had such a deep impact in my life, the way I think about my growth, and think about my work. It's just outstanding, and I would really encourage people to go through both of these. That's really the only advice I would like to give my entrepreneurial friends.
That's a good closure note. I'll again come. I'll come on to audience's question now, but of course, because we have finished the formal conversation, the bit that I've prepared for both of you, so I would really like to at least say thanks from my side for doing this and taking our time. I think this was a super fun conversation, and very, 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 very solid conversation. With a lot of important advice for entrepreneurs, especially at early stages. Let me quickly pick up a few questions from the audience side, and then we can try and wrap in next 10 minutes. I'll more the what is simpler question, which is from Sahil. Sahil has a question which is the cheapest and best way to market own product? Uh, any of you can take this one. I'll repeat it for you. Which is the cheap and the best way to market your own product?
Well, it depends on the product. So, I mean, if you're selling online or if you're selling digitally, you'll have to obviously use digital marketing channels. Um, and be very careful, because those digital marketing channels the plumbers will always take your money. So cautiously spend your marketing spend, especially when you're starting out, whether it's Google or Facebook or wherever else you're advertising, Insta. Be very, very careful on marketing spend, because it can actually ramp up really, really quickly if you don't manage it well.
Okay, Vedant, do you want to take a jab at this one?
Yeah, again, not much experience with startups and how they market their products or their services. But on a personal note, we only use the digital channel for marketing. And I think the dividends that it's paid is just absolutely incredible, because uh, the offline marketing space is vastly different from the digital marketing space, right? What's there physically is, may or may not be there online, but what's online is definitely not there physically. Your reach is tremendous. You can define geographies, demographics, male, female, age groups, whatever you want, and it's razor sharp pinpoint marketing that you can achieve. Of course, as Samir said, be very careful and be very cautious of how you approach digital marketing, because it can burn a hole really, really quickly if you don't know what you're doing. So my personal advice is not only to get a great agency that can support you, but actually do a course yourself, which is built for entrepreneurs on understanding digital marketing. And I did one such course, which I think was just one of the greatest learnings I had. And it's taken away the fear of digital marketing and really put the controls in my hand. And that's just been great for us.
Awesome. I'll come on to the next question, which is from Hemant. Hemant has asked 4 questions, but 2 of them are like really, are other topics for a masterclass. So I'll just ask 2 questions, which I think can be answered very quickly. Question number 1 is, if you want to start a tech company, uh, or you want to start a tech product, tech startup, where would you display your first prototype? Like what should be the place where you can display or maybe get the first level validation? I'm assuming that's what is the intent behind the question is. So like if you can share your insights with him. I'm assuming he's a tech entrepreneur building some sort of a tech product, digital SaaS IT service enabled product. uh, what should be the place to display the prototype? That's the question. Open to both of you.
So Dilnawaz, again, it depends on the product. Is it a B2B product? Are you selling to corporates? Is it a B2C product? Are you selling to end consumers? But the best way to do this is get a small subset of your customers and pilot it. You must have a way to pilot your product first. That's really, really important. That's what I would say.
Awesome. Vedant, your take?
I think Samir has answered that really well. And again, as I don't have personal experience on this, I don't think
Mhm.
I'm the right person to really make a comment. But what Samir says makes perfect sense to me.
Okay. And as a moderator, I would like to say that, and if it's fine with both of you, I can quickly take a jab at the question number 2 and 3, because both of them are like very open-ended questions. So, Hemant, again, the question, how to
Yes.
launch your digital product, I think it's a very open-ended question. I think rather we can have a detailed session on how to launch a digital product. I'll request maybe both of you, or we'll get more speakers to do a masterclass on how to do a launch of a digital product. And your question, what is the eligibility for a pitch deck? What question should you have answered? I have a detailed 3 hour video content on my YouTube channel, which is called Special Series on Startup Funding. Hemant, go and check out on my YouTube channel. You will find, because it's a 3 hour content. Or if you want to kind of summarize it in quick 30 seconds, Samir, you can take a quick jab at it. But it's a 3 hour conversation, I would say. But yeah, if you can quickly take a jab at this one.
I can give you 2 lines. Just Google business plans from some of these top funders. All of the top names that you know in venture, all of them have a framework for a business plan. Just use that. That would be very helpful. But it's not that simple, because you have to spend hours and hours and days to process what you need to put in the table of contents of that business plan.
Awesome. And last one is very interesting, which of course I won't talk from the startup point of view, because this is one question which comes often. Uh, his question is when to switch startup to a legal structure. But I'll make it a little more open-ended for you, because a lot of founders get confused when to even register a legal entity, and they also get confused between whether we should go for a LLP, go for a firm, go for a proprietorship, and go for a private limited. So tell us the roadmap, tell us the path founders should be taking while starting a business and then entering into the legal structure. So I think that's a very interesting question. Samir, your take on this one?
Immediately get a great lawyer. And if you don't have a lawyer, ask a friend who's started up, use their lawyer. If you don't know, send me an email. I'll introduce you to 3 lawyers. But a very, very important that you do the structuring as soon as possible. It actually doesn't cost much money to set a company up in India today, and it actually doesn't take very long. What is very important is upfront, the structure must be right, the partnership agreements must be right between the founders. Otherwise, there's a lot of chaos as the company grows.
Amazing. So with that, I think we are at end of the conversation. Any last closing thoughts? Any last closing remarks from both of your side, and then I'll officially wrap the session. So any of last closing thoughts from both of your side, Samir?
Guys, I encourage you to at least give entrepreneurship a shot. I think today, I mean, all of my time on the planet, I wish I was a little younger where I could try something completely new and be a founder. Uh, the way founders think today, the way they're building from India, for India, from India, for the world is fantastic. And you have the funding and you have the platforms. It's a fantastic time to try and build something of your own as a founder, especially in India, because there's a lot of focus in India and the ecosystem has really, really evolved. I would say, even over the last 5 years. That's my suggestion.
Amazing. Vedant, your closing remark, and maybe I would also request you to talk a bit about GAC as well, because what Samir said, give a shot at entrepreneurship. I think GAC is a platform which is giving a huge opportunity and platform for students to, and early stage founders to apply or do take their shot at entrepreneurship. So I would
Absolutely.
want you to give a closing remark, and also most importantly, talk a bit about GACA.
Absolutely, Dilibas. I think this is the perfect platform for individuals between the ages of 18 and 31 who've got at least a turnover of $500 in a financial year, or a funding of $1,000, right? So even if you don't have a turnover, but you've got seed fund that you can show up 75, 76,000 rupees, you're eligible to apply to the GSEA, which is a platform like none other. You get into the hot seat with with VCs, with entrepreneurs, with angel investors who can show you the way, who can invest in your business and really give you those ideas and mentor you in the way that you need to be mentored, or the direction that you require in this early journey of yours. And as Samir said, give entrepreneurship a try. It is a journey like none other. It's very difficult. It takes a lot out of you, but the dividends are unparalleled. I think the kind of growth that you get, not only financially, but even as a human being, in connecting with the right people at the right places, in getting different perspectives, and just growing as a person, is perhaps not possible in any other way of life, or difficult, I would say. So I would really encourage people who are listening here, or who would be seeing this video later on, please do apply to GSEA and come and see what how the world unfolds for you. Secondly, I personally think from an entrepreneur's perspective, like I said earlier, if you can identify why it is that you're doing what you're doing, why is it that you're building a product, what is the core reason, what is the core problem that you're trying to solve, number one. And number two, just stick with it. So many times you'll see people who start off doing one thing and then they jump to another, and then they'll extend it to a third and a fourth. And after a few years, they really don't know what it is that they're trying to do, just because it seemed attractive to do, or somebody, decided to fund them in another line, in another parallel work. I think if you identify the root problem and decide to stick with it, that, in my opinion, is really powerful, and that is what is iterated in the book, The One Thing. Find the one thing and stick to the one thing instead of beating around the bush. And I think a lot of the greatest companies on earth were built on this principle, whether it's Google, that only focused on search, whether it was Microsoft, whether it's Apple. They pretty much focus on just one thing, and their entire business has been built on one thing. So for me, that is like a guru mantra.
Amazing. Uh, so thank you so much to both of you. I'm sure you would have enjoyed the conversation in the last 1.5 hour, 1 hour. But most importantly, I'm sure all those people who have watched this would have made their notes, would have learned a lot. So thank you for sharing all your wisdom, all your knowledge, all your experience on this platform. And give me 1 more minute to wrap up the conversation, and I will then see you at the backstage. Real thankful to you for your time, and I'm sure everybody in the audience will also be thankful. As I said, it's difficult to catch hold both of you, but thank you so much for doing this today. Let me quickly give a wrapping note, the closure note for the conversation, and then I'll meet you at the backstage. So folks, what you're seeing, what you're watching today was the live from uh, yeah, just a second. Yeah, was the live from GSE in New Delhi, 2021. So, all those who do not know, GSE is Global Student Entrepreneurs Award, which is a premium global competition for students who are operating, who are running their businesses while back in college. They're studying and they're building businesses back in college. As Vedant mentioned, you need to have some sort of a revenue, like almost $500 or a funding of $1,000. But don't worry, that's not the barrier. Make sure you apply. I'm putting in the application link on your screen. Make sure you take a screenshot. Make sure you take a note of it. But most importantly, if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, the link is also in the description. So go and apply. Now it's a very simple form. You don't have to do anything. Just fill in the basic information, and our team will get in touch. Uh, what you should also know is that GSA supports student entrepreneurs with mentorship, recognition, connection, and access to funding, and a really deep and large network, so that you can take your business to the next level. At GSA, students compete for a total prize package of $50,000 in cash, and a winner takes away $25,000. And all the lodging, travel, boarding, all of this is covered by the GSA Globals. So you have a huge opportunity to compete at a regional level, at a global level as well. And then the additional awards at global finals for social impact, innovation, and there's a competition called Lessons from the Edge. So it's a huge opportunity. Please make sure you utilize your time well, utilize this opportunity well, this platform well, and make sure you also spread the word about it in your network, in your community, among your friends, and also share this on social media if you can. With that, I'm the Lavas Khan. I'm signing off from this live for EOGSEA New Delhi. And I hope to see you in the competition. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching us live. And I'll see you next Saturday with another live. And till then, you can like the video, put your questions, subscribe, share, and make sure the world knows about it. Thank you so much. And I'm signing off with this live. Thank you so much. And take care, everybody. Bye bye.